Hi and hello, I'm Mazriel and welcome to my Dungeon Journal series. Algeth'ar Academy is a 4-boss dungeon returning from Dragonflight and features bleeds, poisons, and dots, so cleanses will be invaluable here. Congrats, tanks, it's still a dwarf meta. Dungeon's intro gimmick is pretty simple. Use the launcher to reach the quad where you can speak to one of 5 dragons from each flight to receive a buff that will persist through death. From here, tanks have 2 possible routes, straight ahead towards the Overgrown Ancient, or left towards Vexamus. On the PTR, most groups like to lust pull the trash surrounding the Ancient, so that's where we'll go first. Hungry Lashers are these little guys, and they're just auto-attack bots, so the tank simply needs to keep them in a cleave group. Vile Lashers are the larger flower mobs, and they have 2 abilities to watch out for. First is the Vile Bite, which is a stacking bleed, so healers need to watch their tanks, tanks need to watch the stacks. Seed Detonation are these green swirls on the ground that have to be dodged. If you're caught inside of it, you can be stunned, and for tanks and healers in higher keys, that could usually end up in a group wipe. Aggravated Skitterflies are the real danger in this area. They have a stacking enrage in the form of agitation, and there's far too many to keep all of them soothed. Pair this with Darting Sting, which is a high damage charge at a random player, and you have a lethal combo. These things will absolutely truck in higher keys. Make sure to watch out for them, and DPS, you should be focusing them now. Once all the trash is dead, the RP for the first boss automatically starts. The Overgrown Ancient is a cleave-heavy fight with deceptively simple mechanics that can become lethal surprisingly fast. Bark Breaker is your basic tank buster that also applies a physical damage debuff on whoever it hits, so tanks need to prepare to get walloped. Germinate causes swirly circles to appear underneath all the players that will then spawn adds. Everyone needs to try and stack these tight and bait close to the boss without getting hit by one going off. Tanks then need to keep the Ancient in cleave range and have DPS kill as many of these lashes as they can while they're still sleeping. Branch Out summons an Ancient Branch, which is an add that will put a bleed on the entire party. This needs to get cleaved down ASAP, and it will also try to cast Healing Touch, which needs to be on a kick rotation. Once dead, the Ancient Branch will spawn a circle on the ground, and the party has to step inside of it in order to cleanse their bleed. If you don't, it will stack with future branch outs, and that will quickly kill you. Once the Overgrown Ancient is full of life energy, it will cast Birth Forth, which causes party-wide damage and awakens all the hungry Lashers spawned from Germinate. These Lashers are different from the ones you fought previously, as they have a stacking poison that will be applied to anyone it hits. Healers need to be watching their tanks, and you need to be on top of poison cleanses or you're going to end up dead. And that's the fight. Rinse and repeat until dead. Take the next launcher, and tanks should immediately pull the Guardian Sentry to a pillar and play with their back to the wall. You'll see why soon. Storm Slash, a simple damage attack. Tanks just need to be sure to have their mitigation up. Deadly Wind spawns tornadoes that stun and damage players. Don't touch them. Expel Intruders, a large AoE circle that will knock anyone inside of it off the platform. You can line of sight behind a pillar to avoid this attack, or just have your back to the wall and get knocked against that. And that's it. Don't get dropped off, and we'll be able to move on to the next fight. Once you arrive at the pitch, you'll have to kill 3 waves of Territorial and Alpha Eagles in order to trigger the boss. Territorial Eagles cast Peck, which will apply a bleed, so tanks need to be ready with mitigation. Healers, you need to be ramping up. Alpha Eagles cast Gust. This is a knockback frontal. They'll also cast Raging Screech, which inflicts party-wide damage and buffs all other Eagles. So for DPS, this is your priority target. Get them killed quick. So once the 3rd wave of Eagles is dead, you'll summon Crawth by carrying 3 orbs to the flaming goal that appears. Crawth is a bullet hell boss that requires a fair amount of movement and watching your feet with some pretty unique arena mechanics. Savage Peck is a physical tank buster that will also apply a physical dot. Be ready with the defensive and ensure your mitigation is topped off in order to not stress out your healer. Deafening Screech is a party-wide AoE that will interrupt and silence any casters in the middle of a spell. Healers need to ensure the party is topped up, and all casters have to watch that they're not kicked. Overpowering Gust is a simple frontal. Dodge it. Ruinous Winds. At 75% and 45% health, Crawth will start a 20-second cast of Ruinous Winds, which will turn into a long channel that pulses party-wide damage and knockbacks every few seconds. Before this goes off, the party will need to score a goal. The one they choose will determine a buff and arena hazard for the fight. Scoring 3 points in the goal of the Rushing Wind triggers Gale Force. Gale Force knocks Crawth, pushes players back, and summons roving cyclones that everyone needs to dodge. Motes will appear around the arena that can be picked up for a haste and movement speed buff. This effect also applies immunity to being pushed by Gale Force, so they're worth grabbing. Scoring 3 points in the goal of the Searing Blaze triggers a Firestorm. Firestorm stuns Crawth and makes her take 75% increased damage for 12 seconds, and afflicts her with Blistering Fire. Also, the goal erupts in flames, launching several motes of fire into the arena. If you're inside one of the circles when one lands, you'll take heavy damage and be stunned. Blistering Fire emits heat that continuously pulses damage out to the party. Healers are going to need to fight back the rot and ensure no one falls too low so they aren't killed by the pulsing AoE or any of Crawth's other abilities. Both mechanics will require quick footwork and, as you saw, they both last the entire length of the fight, so the ideal order and time to pop the goals will likely vary based on the level of the key and the skill of your party. Once the big bird is dead, double back a bit and take the launcher to the next platform, where we face 5 new types of mobs before fighting Vexamus. Vicious Ravagers are these long arcane dragons that have 2 abilities to watch out for. Vicious Ambush, a large circle will appear around a random player before the Ravager teleports to them, causing damage, knocking back anyone inside, and applying an arcane dot. Healers need to ensure whomever is targeted is topped off, and defenses will probably be necessary in higher keys. Whoever is targeted must move the circle away from the party. You don't want multiple people getting trucked by this. Rift Breath happens immediately after the ambush. It is a channeled frontal cone that has to be sidestepped. Corrupted Mana Fiends are the arcane elementals and cast Surge. This is not a standard bolt, and it needs to be kicked as a high priority as it deals lethal arcane damage. Mana Void is a 4-second dot. When it expires, it damages and drains the mana from everyone in 4 yards of a player. Arcane Foragers are the little mana worms. Not overly dangerous on their own, but do watch out for Vicious Lunge, where they lunge at a random target dealing physical damage. Anybody too low could find themselves killed by this. Spellbound Battle Axe are the floating weapons. Its auto attacks do additional arcane damage, so tanks need to be sure your mitigation is up, and classes particularly vulnerable to magic might want to keep your CD ready if you're pulling big. Moving to the next boss arena, you'll find Unruly Textbooks, which will cast Monotonous Lecture on a random party member and puts them asleep. This is a high priority kick. You don't want to be down anyone during the fight. Clear the boss arena and the roleplay for Vexamus will automatically begin. Whereas Crawth was all about dodge and mechanics, Vexamus chooses to mix it up a bit. Vex will periodically summon arcane orbs that move toward it. If they hit the boss, they explode for party-wide damage and apply Oversurge to everyone. Players need to absorb them, but have to watch out as the orbs will still deal arcane damage and applies Oversurge, a stacking debuff that increases how much damage you take from each orb. Tanks and beefier DPS like Death Knights and Paladins should do the bulk of these. Immunities do work here, so make smart use of them. Mana Bombs, a debuff applied to 3 players. It's a 3-second arcane dot that explodes and damages everyone within 4 yards of the afflicted player and drops a puddle. Players with this dot need to spread out to the edge of the arena and ensure they're not stacking as it'll kill party members. This can target tanks and healers. Arcane Expulsion. This is a tank buster cone that deals heavy arcane damage. Tanks need to keep this pointed away from their party as it will follow them. Don't sidestep and accidentally end up killing someone. Arcane Fissure. When the boss reaches 100 energy, it'll cause party-wide damage and a pushback that also causes circles to spawn under players. Dodge the circles before they explode and avoid overlapping with anyone. And that's the fight. Watch your feet, watch where you drop puddles, rinse and repeat until he's dead. Make your way back across the quad and through the Overgrown Ancient arena to get to the final area of the dungeon. Outside Doragosa's door, our first new mob are Spectral Invokers. Invokers are spellcasters that like to spam arcane bolts, which need to be kept on a kick rotation. Echo Knights are big melee dragons and need to be pulled carefully. Astral Whirlwind will summon a ghost to themselves that will spin in place and deal arcane damage to anyone inside of its area. Arcane Smash is the real danger here. It's a large party-wide AoE that trucks. It can definitely kill people if too many go off at the same time, so healers need to keep a close eye out for these. Echo of Doragosa is another bullet hell boss with a fun gimmick that helps shake things up and keeps everyone on their toes. On pull, Doragosa will immediately cast Unleash Energy, which is a party-wide damage that summons 2 arcane rifts nearby. Arcane Rift. The rifts summoned by Unleash Energy will hurt players standing within them. Throughout the fight, they will periodically spit out uncontrolled energy, which are these orbs that have to be dodged. Now, before we get to the rest of Doragosa's abilities, we need to talk about Overwhelming Power. This is the main gimmick of the fight. It's a buff applied whenever a player is damaged by any of the dragon's arcane attacks or the orbs released by rifts. It both damages players as well as grants haste with each stack. At 3 stacks, Overwhelming Power will explode and drop a new rift, which will then continue to summon uncontrolled energy for the remainder of the fight. The trick is to balance the amount of stacks you have to maximize the buff while also keeping the fight area clean. The rest of Doragosa's mechanics are all fairly basic and easy to anticipate. Energy Bomb marks players and detonates after 6 seconds, dealing arcane damage and applying Overwhelming Power. Healers just need to ensure marked players are topped off, while players need to watch that they're not about to drop a new rift. Arcane Missiles fires arcane missiles that apply Overwhelming Power. Astral Blast deals heavy arcane damage and applies Overwhelming Power. This is a tank buster. Don't be on top of the tank. Tank watch your mitigation. Power Vacuum pulls everyone inwards, then explodes for arcane damage and a knockback. Run out as soon as you pulled in to avoid death. And you're done. Rinse and repeat until victorious. I hope you enjoyed the guide. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe down below, and check out the rest of the series as I have a video for every dungeon in Midnight Season 1.